good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 1st April 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. United States is currently grappling with multiple challenges across various sectors. The Trump administration has petitioned the Supreme Court to permit deportations under the Alien Enemies Act after a federal appeals court blocked its use on Venezuelan gang members without due process. Donald Trump signed an executive order aimed at combating exploitative ticket scalping, alongside Kid Rock. Significant funding cuts are impacting Planned Parenthood, potentially reducing access to services like birth control and cancer screening. Harvard University is under review for $9 in federal contracts and grants due to anti-Semitism concerns. The Department of Homeland Security is resigning legal protections for 532,000 Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans. President Trump has pledged to curb migration, effectively closing the border with Mexico to immigrants, sending fewer than 400 men, many of whom are Venezuelan, to offshore operations. Trump has even mused about a third term and plans to impose reciprocal tariffs starting April 10. He also expressed interest in TikTok's continued operation. Regarding foreign policy, Trump reportedly threatened secondary tariffs on Russian oil if a Ukraine deal isn't reached, angered by Putin's criticism of Zelensky. U.S. airstrikes targeted is in Somalia, in coordination with the Somali government. A near collision involving a U.S. passenger flight and a military jet was averted near Washington. D.C. advocacy groups are challenging Trump's executive order to overhaul the U.S. election system. Measles cases have reached 378, with Texas reporting 327, and New Mexico 43 cases. Adding to international concerns, U.S. airstrikes in Yemen resulted in the deaths of at least 3 Houthi rebels and injuries to 12 others, according to the rebels around Sana'a and Hajar governor. President Trump has pledged not to fire anyone over an accidental leak of his administration's plans for an airstrike against the Houthis in Yemen. In other global news, Pakistan saw Mohammed Jawad Aziz operating an illicit procurement network through his Canada-based company, Diversified Technology Services, to obtain U.S. origin goods for prohibited entities linked to its nuclear, missile, and UAV program. Meanwhile, Bangladesh will honor its women, student protest leaders with the Madeleine Albright Honorary Group Award. Turning to Canada, Mohammed Jawad Aziz, through his company, Diversified Technology Services, facilitated the procurement of U.S. origin goods for prohibited entities in Pakistan. The focus shifts to China and Hong Kong, where Secretary of State Rubio accused Beijing of breaking promises to Hong Kong residents, leading to U.S. sanctions on officials for rights abuses. Speaking out, Denmark's Jens Frederik Nielsen stated firmly that Greenland will not be acquired by the United States and will decide its own future. Returning to Somalia, the U.S. coordinated a strike with the Somali government against multiple ISIS Somalia targets. Looking east, India and the U.S. aim to finalize the first phase of an agreement by the fall of 2025. In the realm of higher education institutions, Dr. Joan Liu reported that NYU canceled her talk on USAID cuts, deeming it anti-governmental. A Trump task force is also reviewing Harvard University's funding after Columbia University complied with federal demands regarding campus anti-Semitism, while the University of Minnesota says one of its graduate students is being detained by U.S. immigration authorities. Shifting to the entertainment industry, Coyote vs. Acme, starring John Cena and Will Forte, will be released in cinemas in 2026 after initially being shelved by Warner Bros. For a tax write-off. In Wisconsin, Elon Musk is providing $1 million each to 2 voters to counter potential lawsuits. Finally, in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams has requested a federal judge to dismiss criminal corruption charges before a political deadline this week. Myanmar was struck by a devastating 7.7 magnitude earthquake in its central regions, followed by a 6.7 magnitude aftershock. The quake caused widespread destruction, particularly in Mandalay, collapsing ancient sites and buildings and largely cutting off Sagaing. Myanmar's military rulers have requested international assistance. Approximately 150 mosques and pagodas were damaged, and the air traffic control tower at Naypyidaw International Airport toppled. The death toll has surpassed 2,000, with over 3,900 injured and 270 missing, according to the junta. DA estimates suggest the death toll could exceed 10,000. The junta has declared a week of mourning. Over 700 Muslim worshippers died when mosques collapsed during Friday prayers. Muslim worshippers later gathered near a destroyed mosque for the first prayer of Eid al-Fitr. A woman was rescued alive after being trapped for nearly 60 hours in a Mandalay hotel rubble. Rescue operations are underway, facing challenges like damaged roads, communication issues, and the ongoing civil conflict. Volunteer rescuers, sometimes unequipped, are searching for survivors, with some reporting being blocked by the Myanmar military from reaching a rebel stronghold. New tremors have rattled survivors. The World Health Organization, WHO, has issued an urgent appeal for increased care capacity and a flash appeal for $8 million in emergency support, sending 3 tons of medical supplies. Aid agencies have warned of an extremely difficult response due to the ongoing civil war. Aid workers are delivering the first shipments of help, navigating a country divided by civil war, arms dealers, and drug syndicates. The rebel National Unity Government, NUG, has urged the international community to send relief material to areas under its control and announced a unilateral partial ceasefire to facilitate earthquake relief efforts. China, Russia, India, and the UK have sent emergency response teams, while the US response has been slow due to funding cuts. Satellite images show the extent of devastation across Mandalay and other cities with critical infrastructure damaged. More than 180 monks were taking the 3rd session of a 6-day exam for a senior level of monkhood when the tremors hit. People in Myanmar are wondering whether the latest disaster might be a portent of regime change. In Thailand, the earthquake's effects were felt in Bangkok, where a tower block was affected. At a collapsed building site in Bangkok, relatives anxiously awaited news of an electrician, believed to be trapped under the rubble of an unfinished 30-story tower for Thailand's State Audit Office. Rescuers were desperately searching for 76 more people, fear trapped. A skyscraper under construction collapsed. Patients evacuated from a Bangkok hospital due to tremors have been relocated to a sports hall. United Kingdom. Sophie Chandauka, chair of Centrebale, alleges Prince Harry subjected her to bullying and harassment in an attempt to remove her from her position, accusing him of unleashing the Sussex machine against her. Chandauka claims donations to the charity decreased after Prince Harry moved to the US. Prince Harry resigned from Centrebale because of an irreparable breakdown in his relationship with Chandauka and the board, following conflicts where Chandauka alleges Harry attempted to damage the organization after failing to remove her. Sources close to ex-trustees dispute Chandauka's accusations. Ali Kololo, a Kenyan man wrongly convicted of involvement in the 2011 murder of British tourist David Tebbutt, is suing the Metropolitan Police. Kololo spent over a decade imprisoned in appalling conditions before his conviction was quashed in 2023. Millions of Britons are facing rising costs across various bills in what is being called awful April, with increases in energy, water, car tax, and TV licenses. A study reveals that only 2.5% of private rentals in England are affordable for individuals on housing benefit. Charities warn the freeze on housing benefits, effective Tuesday, will result in more people facing rent arrears and homelessness, affecting 5.7 million households. Varada Setu, the newest star of Doctor Who, believes that woke criticisms prove the show is inclusive and on the right track. Setu plays the Doctor's companion, Belinda Chandra, and the pairing with Ncuti Gatwa marks the first time the TARDIS team is solely people of color. A search is underway in East London for an 11-year-old girl who fell into the River Thames near Barge House Causeway, close to London City Airport. Emergency services launched a large-scale response initially, which was later scaled down. The girl's next of kin are receiving support. The High Court in London heard that actor Noel Clarke made calls to women he believed cooperated with The Guardian before the publication of sexual misconduct allegations. These calls left the women shaken, fearful, and in tears. Paul Lewis, The Guardian's head of investigations, testified in defense of Clarke's libel claim against the publisher. Amid growing concerns about the impact of extreme online content on young people, a smartphone-free childhood campaign is gaining traction in Britain. 6 youth demand activists were arrested at Quaker House in London on Thursday during a raid. Quakers in Britain condemned the arrests, arguing that they highlight the consequences of criminalizing protest. Military documents from Catterick Garrison, a major military base in North Yorkshire, England, were found scattered in Newcastle, about 60 miles away. The Ministry of Defence is investigating the incident. In an effort to reduce inequalities, the morning after pill will be available for free at pharmacies in England later this year. United States. Virginia Giuffre, who accused Prince Andrew of sexual assault after being trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, claims she has days to live due to kidney failure resulting from a bus crash where she sustained a head injury and is hospitalized. France is currently embroiled in political turmoil after Marine Le Pen, leader of the National Rally Party, was convicted of embezzlement. The court sentenced Le Pen to 4 years in prison, suspending 2 years and imposed a 5-year ban from public office, along with a €100,000 fine. This ruling could prevent her from contesting the 2027 presidential elections. Le Pen, a 3-time presidential candidate, condemned the decision as politically motivated and vowed to appeal. Jordan Bardella, president of the National Rally, has decried a dictatorship of judges and called for peaceful mobilization. The embezzlement conviction relates to Le Pen's misuse of European Parliament funds. In other news from France, Education Minister Elisabeth Borne participated in a sex education class in Bordeaux. The government is working to fully implement the mandated sex education curriculum in schools, after 25 years of it being required. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has expressed readiness to secure a hostage release agreement in Gaza, emphasizing the effectiveness of military pressure and refuting claims of insincerity in negotiations. Simultaneously, Netanyahu navigates intensifying legal and political hurdles at home, often overshadowed by the ongoing conflict in Gaza. The country issued an evacuation order for southern Gaza, including Rafah and parts of Khan Yunis, amidst continued bombardments. The Israeli military acknowledged targeting ambulances, though lawyer Jeffrey Nice disputes Israel's justification of Hamas using ambulances as cover. Gazan civilians detained in Israel, including a nurse, civil servant, and teacher held without charges, are allegedly not being informed about family deaths resulting from Israeli attacks. Military strikes extended into Beirut's suburbs, marking the second such incident in under a week and sparking concerns about a potential breakdown of the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. The Israeli military issued a counter-offer after Hamas announced its acceptance of a new Gaza ceasefire proposal. It has also come to light that Meta profits from advertisements promoting illegal Israeli settlements in the West Bank. In Gaza, the UN reports that Israeli forces killed 15 Palestinian paramedics and rescue workers, burying them in a mass grave after attacking them, while they attempted to rescue colleagues who had been shot at earlier. Hamas has urged armed resistance against displacement following Israel's recent evacuation orders. Bakeries in Gaza face potential closure within a week due to Israel's ongoing blockade, restricting food and supplies. Turning to Lebanon, Hezbollah has declared that it will respond if Israel persists in its attacks on Lebanese territory. China is strategically positioning itself amidst global political realignments, seeking to capitalize on opportunities while mitigating potential risks. China is confident in its enhanced global influence and the perceived adoption of its economic strategies by other nations. China's foreign minister expressed optimism regarding the potential improvement of relations between Russia and the U.S. military exercises have commenced around Taiwan as a clear message to separatist movements. In economic news, a significant oil field was discovered near Shenzhen, yielding 413 barrels of crude oil and 68,000 cubic meters of natural gas daily. China, along with Japan and South Korea, is focusing on bolstering regional trade in preparation for possible tariffs. Bangladesh sees China as a key ally and anticipates stronger bilateral relations. Furthermore, initial reports of a kidnapping of 3 Chinese crew members off the coast of Ghana have been dismissed as they have been confirmed safe. Wang Yi, China's foreign minister, will soon meet with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, in Moscow. Turning to Japan, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth met with his counterpart in Tokyo to address concerns about U.S. security commitments in the region. Hegseth reiterated the strength of the alliance and promised to accelerate the creation of a joint warfighting headquarters designed to act as a deterrent against China. He highlighted Japan's importance as an indispensable partner in confronting China's growing assertiveness and revealed plans to upgrade the U.S. military command in Japan to function as a new warfighting headquarters. Meanwhile, Russia and Ukraine are engaged in discussions regarding a proposal put forward by U.S. President Donald Trump aimed at resolving the ongoing conflict. In related news, China's foreign minister Wang Yi is traveling to Moscow to hold discussions with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. Australia's Reserve Bank has held the cash rate steady at 4.1%, signaling confidence in its inflation target. Richard Marles affirmed Labour's stance of not making deals with the Greens. Former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull sees the Teal movement as a positive influence on democracy. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese denied negotiating with Donald Trump on biosecurity, medicines and news, following a U.S. trade body's targeting of Australian industries, which could lead to tariffs. The Queensland Music Awards withdrew funding after jazz musician Kelly Green won with her entry, River to Sea, sparking a petition in support of Green and condemnation of political expression suppression by pianist Jason Gilham. In a case of mistaken identity, police misidentified Mark Haynes' body using Raymond Irvine's birth certificate. Found on the body, with Irvine disputing claims of Haynes' involvement with a stolen car. Kamala Harris, former US Vice President, is set to speak at the Australasian Real Estate Conference on the Gold Coast, with limited media access. Japan's Financial Services Agency may soon amend the Financial Instruments and Exchange Act. This change aims to legally classify crypto assets as financial products. On Iwo Jima, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth attended a memorial service. The service honored those who died during World War II and highlighted the strong U.S.-Japan relationship. Tokyo is currently enjoying its cherry blossoms, or sakura. The blossoms in Meguro Ward are particularly vibrant. Recent weather changes have affected the bloom's timing and duration. Oliver Richardson, a British citizen, is promoting tourism in Aso, Kumamoto. He featured in an episode of Where We Call Home on NHK World Japan. 80 years after the Tokyo air raid, efforts continue to document survivor experiences. Preserving artifacts from the event is also a priority. Chef Rika is demonstrating how to make traditional Japanese onigiri. Her tuna mayo, umi, and yaki varieties are featured on NHK World Japan's Dining with the Chef program. She provides detailed instructions on rice cooking and filling preparation. An independent investigation found that Fuji Television Network did not adequately support a female employee after a sexual assault. The investigation highlighted a lack of human rights awareness among the company's management. Russia's war in Ukraine continues to escalate, with recent strikes resulting in significant casualties. Drone attacks killed 4 and wounded 21. Kharkiv, targeted for the second consecutive night, suffered at least 2 deaths, with wounded personnel receiving treatment at a military hospital. Ukraine has condemned the Kharkiv attack as a war crime. Amid this conflict, a Ukrainian man with a hearing disability is torn between his new life in Japan and concern for his family back in Ukraine. The Kremlin views efforts to end the war as a protracted process. In a move to reshape historical narratives, a battlefield museum in Ukraine is undergoing changes to decolonize its exhibits. Turn to the United States. Former President Donald Trump weighed in on the conflict, expressing his belief that Vladimir Putin will fulfill his part in ceasefire negotiations. However, Trump also voiced his frustration with both Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. Meanwhile, the Kremlin maintains that Putin remains open to negotiations. In Europe, the ongoing situation has heightened concerns about the need to support Kyiv and bolster its own defenses. Some European leaders believe that appeasing Moscow, a strategy some suggest Trump might pursue, is not a feasible long-term solution. South Korea is bracing for a pivotal constitutional court ruling this Friday on the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol, initiated last December over his declaration of martial law. The court's decision will either permanently remove him from office or reinstate him. Simultaneously, police are actively investigating a 56-year-old man believed to have inadvertently ignited one or more of the recent wildfires that devastated the nation's southern areas, resulting in 30 deaths and the destruction of over 119,000 acres. Authorities also plan to question another man, this one unidentified, who is suspected of accidentally starting a wildfire while clearing overgrown grass at a family grave in Yusong. Meanwhile, in Seoul, former industrial zones are undergoing a transformation, revitalized by temporary pop-up events and stores that are drawing in young customers and reshaping the city's landscape. In related news, a former South Korean lawmaker, previously accused of sexual assault, has been found dead, according to police reports. Pakistan is proceeding with a plan to deport millions of Afghan nationals, alleging deteriorating relations and accusing the Taliban administration of harboring Pakistani militants. This policy targets the expulsion of 3 million Afghans this year, with a deadline set for Monday for those sheltering in Pakistan to leave. Among those facing deportation are over 50 prominent female Afghan women's rights activists who fear imprisonment or death under Taliban rule. In other developments, former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Pakistani forces also conducted drone strikes, resulting in the deaths of 12 terrorists and reportedly 9 civilians. Furthermore, 11 individuals were killed in drone strikes targeting Taliban elements within Pakistan. In Balochistan, a top Baloch leader and workers narrowly escaped a suicide bombing at a sit-in protest site. Syria's interim president, Ahmed al-Shara, has appointed and sworn in a new transitional government 4 months after Assad's removal. This cabinet selection is being viewed as a test of the rebels' commitment to forming a representative government. The process balances calls for diversity with the need to maintain allies of the interim president in key positions. New authorities are also working to seal the country's porous borders, previously used for smuggling guns, drugs, and fuel. These efforts are creating deadly tensions within local communities. In separate incidents, at least 10 people were killed in Syria after gunmen targeted civilians in Tartus and Homs. Turkey is experiencing heightened political unrest as President Erdogan's administration faces accusations of evolving into an autocracy. The imprisonment of Ekrem İmamoğlu, the mayor of Istanbul and a prominent political adversary of Erdogan, has galvanized opposition forces and sparked widespread dissent. Protesters are rallying against İmamoğlu's detention, and the opposition is advocating for snap elections. Demonstrations are anticipated to persist, with targeted events scheduled throughout Ramadan. The government is utilizing technology, including facial recognition, to quell these protests, leading to nearly 2,000 arrests. In response, demonstrators are concealing their faces to evade identification. Despite the crackdowns, President Erdogan is endeavoring to forge a consensus on a new constitution in anticipation of a 2028 election campaign. However, his actions, notably the suppression of rivals and a lack of advancements in Kurdish reforms, are fostering doubt and skepticism within Kurdish communities. Moreover, the jailing of a Swedish journalist has amplified international apprehension regarding the state of freedom of expression in the country. Thailand was struck by a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake in Bangkok, resulting in the collapse of a 33-story building. Rescue efforts concluded after a thorough search for survivors, including workers who shared love stories within the building's walls. Despite these efforts, many individuals remained trapped beneath the rubble, even after the crucial 72-hour window for survival had elapsed. An engineering expert described the building's collapse as highly unusual, raising serious questions about the factors that contributed to the disaster. The collapse project was one of the largest undertaken by a Chinese state-owned company. Adding to the narrative, Indian tourists returning to Delhi shared their distressing experiences from the earthquake. Egypt witnessed a tragic event as a tourist submarine, Sinbad, operated by Sinbad Submarines, sank in the Red Sea near Hurghada's Marriott Hotel Resort, resulting in the deaths of 6 Russian tourists. The submarine carried 45 individuals, including Russian tourists and crew. 39 were rescued, while 4 survivors required intensive care. In a separate event, archaeologists unearthed the tomb of an unknown ancient Egyptian pharaoh from the Second Intermediate Period, 1640 BC to 1540 BC, a period connecting the Middle and New Kingdom. Fiji is currently grappling with multiple challenges, beginning with a delayed report regarding a boxer's death under Fiji Boxing's purview due to the promoter's lack of cooperation with the Commission of Inquiry. Adding to the nation's concerns, villages from Navunikabi, backed by the head of Fiji's Catholic Church, have formally petitioned Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka to hold a proposed hydro dam project, arguing that it is exploitative. In the realm of sports, 15 netball associations, led by Suva Netball, Association President Alamesi Vavazarawa Sachs, are advocating for a leadership overhaul within Netball Fiji, expressing their disapproval of the current leadership under Rubian Sorovaki Bainimarama. Shifting to rugby, the Fijian Drua team asserts that their matches have captivated approximately half of Fiji's population, suggesting they could be the world's most watched rugby team. Sudan's National Museum in Khartoum is now largely empty after extensive looting. Treasures from the Nubian and Kushite kingdoms are gone. The Sudanese army recaptured the area from the RSF. Thousands of artifacts are missing. Satellite imagery showed items being removed by trucks. The full extent of the theft became clear after the RSF retreat. Also in Sudan, paramilitary RSF Chief Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo has said the war with the Sudanese army continues. This is his first statement since the RSF's retreat from most of Khartoum. The conflict has been ongoing for 2 years. Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro will face trial as the Supreme Court has decided to proceed with charges related to his alleged role in a coup attempt. The Brazilian government also issued a formal apology on Monday to families who suffered losses during the nation's military dictatorship, specifically regarding the possible identification of remains in a secret mass grave decades after the victims vanished. Looking ahead, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is slated to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in May. These discussions are crucial, given Russia and China's importance as key allies for Brazil, especially in light of worries surrounding a possible global trade conflict. El Salvador recently received 17 individuals deported from U.S. immigration detention at Guantanamo Bay. These deportees are accused of gang affiliations. Senator Marco Rubio identified them as connected to the Tren de Aragua and S-13 gangs, calling them murderers and rapists. The Trump administration previously designated MS-13 as a foreign terrorist organization. These deportations appear to align with El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele's policies, who emphasizes strict treatment of prisoners. The U.S., by deporting these individuals, seemingly endorses Bukele's approach to law enforcement and prison management. Canada faced significant challenges recently, with over 300,000 residents in Ontario enduring power outages due to a severe ice storm. Winter storm alerts for freezing rain also affected Ottawa and Quebec. Meanwhile, during the nation's election period, comments made by United States President Donald Trump, specifically his proposal for a 25% tariff and the notion of annexing Canada as the 51st state, inadvertently fueled patriotic fervor among Canadians. According to defense expert Adam Chap, the United States, under President Donald Trump's leadership, implemented a 25% tariff, creating considerable disruption within the auto industry. Trump's policies, which included import taxes and his expressed interest in potentially incorporating Canada into the United States, had a notable effect on national sentiment north of the border. Greenland proceeded with its dog sled race, despite the cancellation of the Second Lady's visit initially announced by the White House. The Prime Minister of Greenland is also publicly refuting claims made by former U.S. President Donald Trump regarding potential U.S. control over the island. Adding to the diplomatic discussions, Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen has voiced criticism of the Trump administration's past comments on Denmark and Greenland, especially following U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's recent visit. Afghanistan remains a focal point as students from the American University of Afghanistan, now studying in Qatar, face uncertainty about returning home under the Taliban. Their concerns are amplified by the impact of previous aid and visa restrictions. An American woman, Faye Hall, who was previously held captive by the Taliban, has been freed, with a video released showing her thanking President Trump. The Taliban continues to assert its stance, with one of its leaders declaring that Western laws are superfluous in Afghanistan. Iran is facing renewed tensions after Donald Trump threatened military action if it doesn't accept a new nuclear agreement. Trump stated that bombing would occur if Iran failed to agree to a peace deal constraining its nuclear program. Iranian officials responded sharply, accusing Trump of violating the UN Charter and warning that violence brings violence. The country has lodged a formal complaint with the UN, denouncing Trump's remarks as reckless, belligerent. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has firmly rejected Trump's threats regarding the nuclear deal. Spain is in mourning after a mine explosion in Asturias claimed the lives of 5 workers and left 4 injured. Authorities have initiated an investigation into the incident, focusing on potential safety lapses by mining companies. Meanwhile, on the sports front in Spain, Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Real Sociedad are set to battle it out in the Copa del Rey semi-finals for a coveted spot in the final. Lithuania is in mourning after 3 soldiers participating in a tactical training exercise near Brewed were found dead. Their armored vehicle went missing last week. The vehicle was later recovered from a peat bog. The fate of the 4th soldier remains unknown, casting a shadow over the ongoing search efforts. Tonga experienced a magnitude 7 earthquake. The epicenter was 79 kilometers south-southeast of Pangai. Pangai is located in the Hapai group of islands. A tsunami warning was issued, but later rescinded. The quake caused minor damage and short-lived evacuations. Tonga has since returned to normal. Samoa has declared a state of emergency due to a critical power crisis. Prime Minister Fiame's declaration allows the government to control energy distribution. The aim is to protect public health and maintain essential services. Turning to New Zealand, registrations are now open for Pacific Access category and Samoa quota visas. Up to 1650 Samoan citizens could receive residency visas this year. Nepal is currently facing heightened political instability, with Prime Minister Ali accusing the former king of inciting disharmony. This accusation has intensified existing tensions and triggered protests from the Rastriya Pratatantra Party within parliament. The situation worsened when a pro-monarchy rally turned violent, resulting in the deaths of 2 individuals and injuries to several others during clashes between royalist demonstrators and security forces. Subsequently, authorities have taken action by arresting key leaders associated with the monarchist movement. Bangladesh is undergoing a notable political transformation after the removal of its authoritarian leader. Political parties are strategically using Ramadan events to hint at possible coalitions. This occurs against a backdrop of growing religious conservatism within the nation of 175 million people. Meanwhile, in India, the Congress Party voices apprehensions about Bangladesh's invitation to China. They fear this move could jeopardize India's northeastern territories. The Congress Party is closely monitoring the evolving relationship between Bangladesh and China, emphasizing the need for vigilance to safeguard regional security. Myanmar is grappling with an immense humanitarian crisis after a catastrophic 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck the region. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFRC, has issued a dire warning. They state the level of destruction in Myanmar is unprecedented in Asia for more than a century. Tragically, the earthquake has caused at least 1,700 deaths. Zimbabwe is currently experiencing heightened political unrest, with President Emerson Mnangagwa denouncing calls for his resignation as treasonous. Nearly 8 years after taking office following a coup, Mnangagwa allegedly faces internal dissent from ZANU-PF party members. These individuals are purportedly inciting widespread demonstrations to challenge his leadership. Papua New Guinea is seeing its Supreme Court order Parliament to reconvene on April 8. The purpose is to address a motion of no confidence against Prime Minister James Marape. Separately, Pope Francis approved the canonization of Blessed Peter Turot. Turot was a layperson martyred for his faith in present-day Papua New Guinea. Russia is viewed by some as seeing Trump's deal-making as a can't-lose proposition. Following this, Moldova expelled 3 Russian diplomats, leading to Moscow promising retaliation. In related news, a NATO plane tracked and dodged Russia in the Baltic Sea as part of a new program targeting suspected Russian sabotage. Italy's Prime Minister Meloni is navigating escalating tensions between Trump and Europe, striving to maintain a moderate position. Turning to Africa, the chairperson of an African charity co-founded by Prince Harry has accused him of orchestrating a bullying and harassment campaign aimed at forcing her out. In the Pacific, the Cook Islands police have cautioned the public against posting personal identification items, such as credit cards, driver's licenses, and passports, on social media. Across the Pacific, supporters of former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte in Saipan held a rally and road-waving event, appealing to the International Criminal Court for his safe return to the Philippines. In Europe, Serbia saw protesting students rally outside the pro-government Informa TV building, staging a symbolic decontamination performance while wearing protective white suits. Shifting to Asia, the Eid al-Fitr holiday mood is subdued in Indonesia due to soaring prices for food, clothing, and essential goods, while discrimination in India is dampening the holiday spirit. South Africa is ranked as the most dangerous country to drive in, while Norway is the safest for the fourth year in a row. India ranks 49th out of 53 countries surveyed. Venezuela says the U.S. revoked transnational oil and gas company licenses. Adding to this, Venezuela will also have its first female saint after approval from Pope Francis. In Malaysia, a massive fire near a gas station in Putra Heights prompted evacuations after firefighters identified a burst pipeline as the cause. Meanwhile, a private European aerospace startup says it has successfully completed the first test flight of its orbital launch vehicle from Norway. In Canada, Justin Trudeau's successor is trying to rebuild the Liberal Party's lost popularity through his strong opposition to the Trump storm. Suspected U.S. airstrikes hit Yemen's rebel-held capital overnight, reportedly killing at least one person, according to Houthi rebels. A Kenyan UN peacekeeper was killed in an ambush in the far east of the Central African Republic, according to a spokesperson. China's foreign ministry says 3 Chinese nationals suspected of being kidnapped from a vessel off Ghana's coast are safe. An UA court sentenced 3 people to death in the killing of Israeli Moldovan Rabbi Sexik Kogan. Shakira's message of empowerment drew crowds to 7 sold-out shows in Mexico City. The war in Gaza has become an existential risk to the kingdom. Finally, Russian authorities are moving to lift the terrorist designation for the Taliban. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.